Hi everybody, my name's Amelia and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to answer the question, do crystals actually work? Now, of course, there's a lot of controversy around this argument. There's people that believe they do, there's people that believe they don't. I'm not here to say who's right or wrong because I'm not a professional in any sense of the word except that I'm a professional author. I've said that here before, so I'm a professional writer by trade. That's it. Those are my credentials. But recently I made my crystal collection tour videos. I had part 1 and I had part 2. And anyway, in that video, I was thinking, do they actually work? Now, I have my own personal beliefs, but I thought that it would be kind of fun to dive in to the topic of crystals as a whole and make a video about it and discuss it with you guys. So that's what we're doing today. Also, if I just keep looking over in this direction, it's because there's a window over there, and my neighbor is currently working on his roof, and I can see him. And so it's kind of distracting. I tried to close the blinds a little bit, but the lighting's all weird, so my face on this side is probably cast in shadow. I normally wouldn't do that with the lighting, but I'm easily distracted by movement. Okay, but anyway, before we go ahead and dive into the full video, be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you like it. It really helps out me and the channel, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like stuff like this. And if you want more deep dives like this, let me know. They are kind of hard because I have to do a little bit more research into them before making the video, but I actually really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. So anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Alright, so I think it's important to start out by talking about the perceptions that we have today of crystals. For the most part, I think people can collectively agree that crystals are sort of seen in two ways, either as just a natural form of rock, part of geology, if you will, but they don't really mean much more than normal rocks, and in a more metaphysical sense where people believe that each crystal has some sort of metaphysical property to it. For example, selenite is cleansing and purifying, while lepidolite helps relieve stress. So there's usually two forms of thought here, two little groups of people regarding crystals. To speak for the metaphysical side of things, there are people out there who believe that crystals hold energy, and this energy can come in contact with our own energy, our own energetic fields, and react to us and our intentions, and it's more of a two-way relationship, if you will. So our energy affects the crystals and the crystal's energy affects us. This metaphysical view usually ties certain sort of attributes and traits to different crystals. For example, like I mentioned, selenite being cleansing and lepidolite being able to remove stress. Red jasper is more grounding, and amethyst helps us to awaken psychic activity and helps with relaxation and sleep. These attributes that are attributed to crystals happen for several reasons, and in the metaphysical communities, it's often used as a way for spiritual cleansing and for manifestation. Though I would argue that it's pretty well understood that crystals don't heal you physically. Some people might believe that they help with sickness or with some ailments, but for the most part, if you break a leg, you go to the doctor, you get a cast. You don't put a crystal on your broken leg and hope for the best. Most people that are into crystals, metaphysically speaking anyway, I think would agree with that. On the other side of things, we have crystals being viewed as just a very lovely rock, a piece of decor at times, or a collector's item. I've met a few collectors at the Rock and Gym show I went to not too long ago when I was filming my crystal video, and there I was able to talk to people who didn't necessarily believe that crystals had any sort of metaphysical properties, but they believed that these rocks were very valuable. Certain ones were more rare than others and therefore could be priced as such, but they became more of a collector's item. Kind of like in the way that you find these people who collect old Lego sets and become Lego collectors, or people who collect old records and become record collectors. I mean, you can collect pretty much anything at this point. I would say for the most part, a lot of people can agree that crystals are very pretty and aesthetic, and that having them in your space doesn't necessarily make you a woo-woo crazy person, because you can just enjoy the rock as it is, as a collector's item. Though, of course, there are tons of people today, especially after the pandemic, when crystals really took off, that believe that these crystals do have some sort of spiritual or metaphysical meaning. So those are typically the two schools of thought regarding crystals, but let's dive into something a bit more in depth regarding these stones. Let's talk about the history of crystals. If we're going to try to decide whether crystals actually work as far as providing these metaphysical traits and characteristics, as far as healing you in a sense, we have to look at the history of crystals. Like, where did these ideas come from? Crystals have been used for millennia at this point. And again, it's for several reasons. If we go back and look at the ancient Egyptians who documented their whole lives pretty well, I would say, we have so much information about them and their culture, we can look at their uses of crystals and get a better understanding of what at least their culture believed regarding these stones. In ancient Egypt, stones like carnelian and jasper were highly regarded, as well as lapis lazuli. Carnelian and jasper particularly were believed to ward off and protect against evil and evil spirits. A lot of crystals were built into necklaces and jewelry and were used as amulets. Other ones were carried around or placed on altars in sacred spaces, again because of the metaphysical properties that these people believed these stones had. Some stones were healing, some stones were just protecting, etc. Of course, the ancient Egyptians didn't just use crystals metaphysically. They used them as jewelry, as a method of trade. Precious stones had a price tag, of course, so you could use them you could sell them and use that extra money for goods or whatever else you wanted. You could just adorn yourself with the jewels because they were pretty. I mean, it didn't necessarily have to have a spiritual or religious meaning. Also, stones like malachite were ground up into a powder and used as makeup. Though I would say most people today advise against doing that. Malachite can be very toxic to people, and I would say that ancient methods of makeup are not a good idea. But crystals aren't just mentioned in ancient Egypt, they're also mentioned in the Bible in a few biblical phrases and passages where they talk about gemstones in certain plates of armor. And beyond that, crystals have been widely regarded as sacred or very important, symbolically speaking, in a lot of other cultures. For example, in ancient Chinese culture and even in China today, jade is a very precious and lucky stone. In Hinduism, crystals are also valued, whether used as jewels, like an adornment, or as having some sort of metaphysical or spiritual property. Additionally, Reiki healing uses crystals, at least today, not always. Reiki is an energy-based healing system that we believe originated from ancient Tibetan and Buddhist belief systems. So this sort of shows that crystals and gemstones have had quite a history, at least when connected to spirituality and religion. In a social and cultural sense, crystals had gained some sort of value, and that's why there are price tags on them today. Another material from the earth that has value would be gold. And I think that talking about crystals and the relationship with gold would be very important if we're going to really understand why crystals are valued so much. So let's just talk about gold for a minute. One of the things I have been very curious on, and thanks to this video, I'm actually able to explore it. I mean, okay, I could have explored it on my own time, I know that. But for whatever reason I didn't, and so I did for this video. And the question that I had regarding gold was, why do people like it? Why is gold so special? What makes gold so valuable? I personally don't think I own a lot of real gold. I do have some jewelry that's 14, 18 carat, maybe 20 carat, I don't know. I don't know how the carats work. I do know that 24 karat gold is 100% gold, where everything else becomes like an alloy. But 100% gold, 24 karat gold, is supposed to be very precious and it is very pricey. But my question was why? Why did we decide that gold was valuable? And this is where I started digging into the history. So one of the reasons that gold is so valuable is because it does not tarnish or corrode. My partner Matt has told me before that if you were to get a gold coin and you were to bury it in the backyard and come back and dig it up in 50 years, it would pretty much be the same, with no rust, it wouldn't have tarnished, it would be just as shiny, I mean, once you wipe the dirt off, as it was the day you buried it, which makes gold very useful because you can make things out of gold, like bowls, or you could make jewelry or coins or whatever, and you never have to worry about the metal wearing down. Well, I mean, maybe if you like engraved it, that might wear down over time, maybe, because gold is very soft, but at least the gold itself would not wear down. There's also this idea that gold is very beautiful. A lot of people see gold as just this beautiful metal. I personally am unsure. I don't really like the bright yellow nature of gold. I find it very gaudy sometimes, but at the same time, I understand. It's beautiful, like crystals, and there are certain crystals that I personally don't find very like attractive or visually pleasing, but some people do. I mean, to each their own. Another interesting thing about gold is that there is a sense of rarity to it. There is only so much gold in the world, which makes it very alluring, because there's not like a plethora of gold just lying around everywhere. And out of all the metals that don't tarnish or corrode, gold is one of the few that we have in enough abundance that it's not too rare or too hard to find and work with. And I think that leads us to the next point that makes gold so valuable, is that it is so easy to work with. Because gold can melt relatively easily and be stamped and worked with without much stress or hardship or insane tools, it makes it very easy for it to be used and put in and melted into jewelry or into coins. So of course, currency became very important because of gold. People had these gold coins. It was a way to make trade a little bit easier. You would give gold, in return you would get sheep. I don't know. Whatever you were trading. But then the thing is that gold then had a social construct to it. It now has social and societal implications. Gold on its own is not really valuable, but because we turned them into coins and started trading with them, it became valuable. Of course, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of good and unique qualities to gold that make it very easy and likable as far as metal goes. And as far as metallurgy is concerned, it's very easy to work with. Again, makes it more appealing. But still, the value that we attribute to gold is just a societal thing. It's a cultural thing. We all just collectively decided that gold was going to be valuable. And I think that's kind of how we view crystals today too. We just collectively decided that crystals have a certain price tag and that certain ones are more valuable than others, based on rarity, of course, to dig up and how complex they are to work with, but we decided. That was us. So I think the takeaway here for people who may be struggling to understand why they're so hyped up and why people love them so much, I think just comes back to the whole currency thing. Like, yeah, it's a social construct. These crystals are just rocks, but they have a value to them because we gave them value, just as we give currency, paper currency today, and regular gold value. Okay, so let's rehash a bit. Why do we as a society value crystals? Okay, 1, their beauty, just like we did with gold. 2, the rarity, because some crystals are more rare than others, thus raising their price tags. And also, it was a social construct. We decided that crystals had value. We decided that they looked good in jewelry and that we just wanted to go ahead and put them in everything. We thought they were pretty, and then we assigned metaphysical and spiritual properties to them. But one of the other interesting things that people, at least the spiritual community, always bring up about crystals is that they are used in a lot of our technology. In clocks, in phones, in computers, quartz is used. Quartz is a very abundant crystal, a very abundant material, and we use it in a lot of tech. Now, there are a few reasons why, and I did have to look this up because I wasn't really sure why. The reason we use quartz in electronics like computers, cell phones, and watches is because it has what we call piezoelectricity. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So a small snippet from livescience.com explaining why we have quartz in watches says that some materials, such as certain ceramics and quartz crystals, can produce electricity when placed under mechanical stress, and vice versa. The ability to convert voltage to and from mechanical stress is called piezoelectricity. Inside of a watch is a tiny piece of quartz that is shaped like a miniature tuning fork. When an electric current is passed into the quartz tuning fork, it vibrates at a high frequency, more than 32,000 times per second, and loses hardly any energy when it vibrates. Because of this vibrational interaction between the quartz and the mechanical processes, we're essentially able to keep time. But this is also why we use quartz in certain electronics. So now, not only are crystals beautiful and given a societal value, but they also are useful. Of course, a lot of metals are useful, but certain stones like quartz can be used in our tech. But that doesn't really answer the question of, do crystals work? Like, great, okay, they work in a scientific sense, they can be used to do things in, like, reality. But do they have a metaphysical property or advantage of some sort? So let's dive a little deeper. First, where did the metaphysical beliefs come in? When did that really start happening? And we already kind of touched on this earlier when we talked about how long crystals have been used and involved in society and just in humanity in general. But when we ask when the metaphysical beliefs come in, we can obviously look towards the ancient Egyptians and, of course, other cultures who attributed some sort of religious or spiritual meaning to crystals, whether that was to ward and protect against evil spirits, whether it was to provide good luck and good fortune to a household, or whether it was used to energetically heal the body in some way or another. I think we can still see this today from when we move away from religion into a more spiritual context where a lot of people are collecting crystals, kind of like what I'm doing, because it has a spiritual connotation to it. People believe that certain stones are symbolic of something. The stone, when you hold it, it means something to you. You gave it some sort of symbolic meaning. And through this, I now have a physical representation of what it is that I believe and want to manifest. A lot of people use crystals for intention setting. So this stone, for example, is celestite, which is supposed to help with connecting with your angels and psychic abilities. And because the mind is such a powerful tool, it's such a powerful thing that we still do not fully understand, there is this saying that if you think something and you believe it, it can become your reality. So if I sit for a few minutes every single day with this stone and I hold it and I put intention into it, if I believe that I am going to enhance my psychic understanding, if I believe that I'm going to heal in some way or connect with my angels or connect with spirit in some way or another, then eventually I will. There have been a lot of psychologists who look into the power of intention, the power of manifestation, and while I don't really want to go too in-depth with that in this video since this is supposed to be about crystals, and I feel like intention setting is a whole video and a whole topic all its own, I do think it's important to understand that the mind is extremely powerful and that when you do believe something, it does become your reality. It shapes your perception. It's the reason that people who are not religious do believe in the power of prayer, because it is intention setting. It is you setting your mind to something. And while sure, we don't know why the mind works the way it does, we don't know why mindfulness is so powerful, but we do know that it is and that it does work. If you believe something and you set your mind to it, typically you can manifest that idea into your reality. Obviously, there are limitations, but if I were sick and I just kept mindfully reminding myself that I'm healing, I might heal faster than someone who is not using that mindful technique. So at least from a more skeptic perspective, we can at least come to this understanding that intention and the mind play a really big role in making crystals work. If we focus, if we set our mind to it, if we intend for something to work or do something, then it may happen. Again, with physical limitations, of course, being considered. To go back to an earlier example, if I break my leg and just mentally believe that it heals perfectly fine on its own, that may not be a guarantee. It would probably be a better idea to go to a doctor. However, if I'm feeling sad and lonely and isolated from my friends, and I sit and I set intentions to reconnect with my friends, to not feel so lonely and not feel so sad, that very well may come to fruition. I may one day realize that I am happier, I feel less lonely, and I am very connected with my friends and family. But I think this brings us to our next question, which is, why do we have all these strange metaphysical properties given to crystals? Like, how come red jasper is about grounding and protection? Why is amethyst about working with dreams and sleep and relaxation? How come malachite is connected to transformation? Why do we collectively agree this? Unfortunately, I can't entirely answer this. I think a lot of it has to do with our history and spirituality and our personal belief systems and the myths and lore that have been passed down. We believe certain crystals do certain things because our ancestors did and because the ancient Egyptians did, for example. Or if you watched my crystal collection tour, I mentioned that I personally divide my crystals by color, and specifically by the color of the rainbow or the color of the chakras. And if every chakra means a certain thing, then the color of that crystal is associated with that chakra, then that means that the red crystals are associated with similar things and similar meanings to that of the root chakra. So at least through that line of thinking, now the crystals each have their own metaphysical property. Beyond that, I do think it was more of a collective understanding, ideas and knowledge were passed down, and we kind of ended up where we are today. I haven't dug deep enough into that particular aspect of crystal thought, but I do think it is interesting that now every crystal has a certain metaphysical property. I think it's also interesting that we collectively understand that crystals, I mean, they're from the earth, and because of that, they do have a atomic makeup. They do have some sort of microscopic, not really cellular because they're not alive, but you get the idea, like some sort of makeup and structure at a microscopic level. And at that level, people have found certain patterns in certain stones, and those patterns often reflect a lot of sacred geometry, which is stuff that you can see in nature when we look at flowers or trees. Sacred geometry, of course, has been given its own spiritual side of things. Again, I'm not going to go into that, but the fact that crystals at an atomic level do look like sacred shapes and sacred geometry is another reason that I think they have a lot of metaphysical beliefs attached to them. And as we mentioned earlier, crystals hold energy, at least the piezoelectricity. And because of this energy, there is that energetic connection. I couldn't find any particular scientific articles discussing the relationship of this having its own energetic aura and its own energetic field interacting with a human's energetic field, but we do understand that humans have an energetic field, or what other people in the spiritual community would call an aura. And that energetic field that's around us does interact with other energetic fields, with like live things at least. Whether it interacts with not alive, inanimate objects is still up for debate. The idea that the energetic field of a crystal could affect my energetic field as a living, breathing being is definitely more of a spiritual belief, and I was not able to find any studies, at least scientific studies, proving otherwise. Though I've heard on certain crystal podcasts, I was trying to find the episodes, I swear I could not find them. But I have heard before in the past that crystals do interact, that there have been some studies where they interact with people or with plants. Specifically one study where somebody put crystals in water and then watered the plants with those crystals, and then also gave the plants regular water, and the ones that had crystals grew better. I cannot find that study for the life of me, but yeah, it apparently does exist somewhere. So if you guys know more about these studies than me, let me know down below, because I could not find them. And speaking of studies, there have been studies where they give people crystals and tell them to put intention into them and to believe that the crystal is going to help them through some healing process, but then they don't do it for others, and then see how it compares to the healing journey. And the ones with the crystals tend to do better. Now, whether that was because of the mind and personal intention and the placebo effect, that if you believe something will work, it will, is again still up for debate. So after all of this discussion about crystals and about how there have been some studies that prove crystals work, again, is it related to intention? Hard to say. And that we do recognize that they have an atomic makeup that can look like sacred geometry, and we do have this history of thousands of years of using these stones, whether in jewelry or as a more religious item. Knowing this information, I think, makes crystals a very interesting subject. I think in the end, we can all kind of come to this understanding that at the very least, crystals became a social phenomenon. They became a social construct that we built for them. They have meaning because we chose to give them meaning, just in the same way that gold now has a value because we chose for it to have value. So at the very least, we can say that. But to close out this video, I thought that I would go ahead and give you some of my personal opinions about crystals, because while yes, I'm letting you come to your own conclusions from just what I've said today, I also want to give you my personal beliefs. I do think that crystals hold energy, and I do think that that energy, whether I know how it works or not, connects to me energetically as well. I would like to believe that. I think that we don't always have the technology to prove such things, and of course we don't have the science behind all this to back that belief. And I also recognize that we don't have enough science to prove why intention setting works so well, why mindfulness works so well. Why does meditation and prayer heal? How is there power to it? I think that because we just don't have all the answers, scientifically speaking, I am content in believing that I just don't know how it works, and that doesn't mean it's magical. I think it's okay to believe in things that you don't have all the answers to, and you don't have a way to prove. At least yet. I do think that mindfulness and intention setting have a lot to do with why crystals work in the first place, at least from my personal experience. I started collecting more crystals because I thought they were pretty, to be honest with you, and I started the whole tarot deck collection. That was kind of how I got into the spiritual community in the first place, and through my tarot decks, you know, and connecting them with crystals, I became more attached to crystals, and I'm still exploring, I think, my personal uses for these stones and what I personally believe in them. I do think that intention, prayer, meditation, like all of that has a very big role to play in the question, do crystals work? Like, I think they work because of mindfulness. But also, I just think they're really pretty, so that's why I like crystals. Again, not sure how to explain it, but I don't think everything needs an explanation necessarily. Science must always move forward, of course, and I would love to one day be here when we realize why the mind is so powerful and why, you know, just believing something makes it come true. I would love to see, like, the science behind that, but we don't have that yet. I think that I'm still forming a lot of my beliefs, which is why I made this video, because I guess I don't really know if crystals actually work. I think they do sometimes. I think they do in a sense, but I think it has a lot to do with the mind. But again, I really don't know. I don't have the answers for you. This is more of a rhetorical question now, because I didn't answer it. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you think crystals work? What are your personal beliefs? Do you think it's the placebo effect, that it's just because we set our intentions and now it's more of a mind thing instead of like a physical thing? Do you think that there is something to be said about crystals being used for thousands of years in our history? And what are your thoughts about crystals being used in tech? And do you think that there is some deeper meaning because of that? So anyway, yeah, I want to leave you with these questions, with these thoughts, but yeah, that's all I have for you. Leave comments down below if you want to answer, if you want to have a conversation. Anyway, thank you for watching today's video. I hope you really enjoyed it, and yeah, until next time, I will catch you later.